Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today's Monday, May 14th. I hope everybody had a great Mother's Day weekend. I know here at the household, we definitely got a great day of weather and enjoyed the day thoroughly as well. So hopefully all you mothers out there had a great Mother's Day weekend. All right, let's go ahead and get to some GSM news. Taking a look at our current conditions of our solar wind speed is at 372.4 kilometers per second. That's on a steady decline now, but very slow decline. Density is a 5.2. And taking a look at our sun, right now we're just looking at 2709 is directly Earth facing, has a stable magnetic field that poses no threat for strong solar flares. And I did check out the proton flux today. We're talking about very low activity, if barely considered an A. Sunspot 11, so a smaller grouping. We're still 73 days in 2018 without a sunspot. That's 54%. So it feels like it's been a while since we've seen a spotless day, but I have a feeling we'll see one here soon, as I'll show you in the SDO real quickly. But our KP indices are at a 2, and our 24-hour max is at a 2. I'm sorry, currently it's at a 1. 24-hour max is at a 2. And looking at the SDO for any more coronal holes, now we do see one here in the southern region that is now Earth-facing, and we are expected to see possibly some elevated speeds around the 500-600 range from this coronal hole, but it's just barely under the equatorial region, or right at it actually, if you look at the top northern part, and I'll circle what I'm talking about. This is probably what's going to affect us as far as coronal hole speeds, or solar wind speeds, I mean. And we'll take a look at the SDO in motion. As you see, this coronal hole is pretty stable. Not really growing, not really shrinking. Actually, as we look at the end of this run here, it does look like that this coronal hole did close back up a little bit. So just move it up for you guys so you can see nothing real serious, as the last run shows that this coronal hole is starting to close up. And here is what I was talking about. This is AR 2709. It has a stable magnetic field, and it does not look like we're going to have to worry about it as far as any issues with solar flares. Let's take a look at our TSI reading now. It is sitting, we moved it over a little bit, very end here, the 26th of April. Actually, that might be a little off. We are at 137482 as of the end of April. I believe this is the 29th of April. I'll double check and make sure these are correct numbers, but 1360.74 is what we're looking at right now, and that's right about where the values have been holding steady here in the 0.6s and the 0.70s. Okay, so today I'm doing a little research, kind of reading around, looking at these articles. And, so first of all, before I get started on my articles, I want to thank Mari for joining me on Friday night and filling in for Henrik. I really appreciate I think it's a lot more fun to do these Friday night shows when I've got someone to kind of bounce ideas off. Henrik is awesome. You did a great job, and I just wanted to thank you for filling in. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Deke. It was a pleasure.
It just seemed like the show went a little more, there was a little bit more flow to it when you're bouncing back and forth. And I just, thought I'd just thank you real quick in front of everybody because, you did a great job. Normally you're behind the scenes, but you got a little more action with this the other night. So it was good stuff. And I think Mari and I will definitely plan a weekly show where we can do that back and forth like that. It has to happen. But anyway, enough of me babbling. I brought these articles up. Now, these are from a local newspaper in Virginia, the Winchester Star. Very interesting. I read this, and I wanted to read part of this with you and kind of give you my take on this. But after 30 years, perhaps it's time to pause, take a deep breath, a collective global yogic breath, it says here, and review the facts. And they're talking about man-made global warming, how it's supposed to be catastrophe here. None of the catastrophic predictions of doom have occurred, which that's true. Sophisticated climate model predictions were wrong. Climate sensitivity to CO2 is low. Water vapor accounts for 95% of the greenhouse gas effect and cannot be modeled. Number 3, the consensus climate scientists through the IPCC have strong vested interest, okay? The recent Upton Sinclair quote from Star Forum, a hoax, March 7th. Here's slightly altered, and this is what they're trying to say is that if if it is difficult to get a consistent climate scientist to understand something when his funding depends on it, is not his understanding it. And basically, it's just highlighting what I've always said, that this is all about money. That's why the mainstream media, they're on this game where they want to continue this gravy train of grant money to fill their pockets with, even if it's not truthful enough, because these people have become greedy now. And I mean, honestly, we're working towards a shutdown of this man-made global warming stuff, and I'll get to that too as well. But here, President Obama was fond of saying you can't put lipstick on a pig, or you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Climate scare is the pig with lipstick, is what we're saying here. Our former president is correct. Climate scare is a hoax. Trump-Russian collusion is a hoax. I don't know why they had to throw that in here. Climate change is cyclic. Now, he goes on to talk about solar activity from here on out. 103,000-year-old ice ages, 11,000-year interglacial warm periods. He talks about sunspots when they first started looking at them. An increased number of sunspots correlate with global warming and vice versa, decrease with cooling. So this author does a really good job of basing the reason why we are looking at cooling than warming. He's showing us right here the past medieval period, which I like to talk about a lot. The CO2 levels in these periods right here, 1100 to 1250 AD, were in the 270s, and that's one of the most warmest periods of our history of our Earth. And then, of course, it talks about the Little Ice Age, the Modern Minimum, the Dalton Minimum. It talks about the quakes in U.S. history, which was 1811 in the Mississippi New Madrid quake that happened. That's the largest in United States history. It was 1811. And then, of course, the Tambora eruption in 1815. At the end, I'm going to point out here, it says here, historically, the warming should be ending. The last two solar minimums occurred 200 years apart. 200 years have passed. Let's hope global cooling is not on the horizon. This guy is basically wrapping this article by saying, listen, 200 years has came and went, and we're due for a last minimum. And everything that he just went over here with sunspots and minimums and, you know, the cycles. He knows. Bernard Swope knows. Okay, that's the guy who wrote this, resident of Winchester. But is he going to come out and say, yes, no, he's one of these reporters. He's a journalist that actually throws the facts at you and lets you make a decision on your own. Unlike what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to spell it out for you, but that's what this guy's doing right now. And I like that. If you have any common sense and any comprehension, if you just read what he just gave us, and he's explaining this 200 years apart situation, and now he states 200 years has passed. So what do you think's on the way? I'll leave the link in the description. Here's another article that also is talking about many ice ages, horrific thunderstorm and cyclone seasons, a lot more floods in the future for Australia's weather. So I gave you an example from a USA article, and then today I found in the Northern Star, Ice Age, forecaster predicts coldest winter on record. This ain't the first time we've heard this either. Mari actually mirrored a video from a gentleman from Sky News in Australia, calm as a cucumber, telling everyone how many ice age conditions are coming here and the next minimum coming up, and that just means we're going to have colder winters and more harsh storms and you know weirder growing seasons. But he said it so calm and like, this is normal. But it's starting to show up a little bit more and more in mainstream media. Now, this article was written back on May 1st, but still very relevant. This person here, amateur weather forecaster David Taylor. Mr. Taylor, who runs East Coast Weather Facebook page, has correctly predicted major weather events in the past, and his latest terrifying prediction was that Australia could experience its coldest winter on record. Let me interrupt you real quick. Is it not true that they say that the southern hemisphere, those winters are a sign of what's to come in your part of the world the next winter? Yeah. And I'm hearing a lot of record cold, record snow coming from the southern hemisphere so far this year. So this is where we have to keep an eye on global weather right now. Temperatures and snowfall could reach shocking levels compared to previous years, and icy conditions could impact huge areas of the country in periods. Now, Mr. Taylorsley previously told the Karen's Post, while it will be slightly cooler than normal in the north, the real cold will be in the southern states. And that's, of course, closer to Antarctica down south. He uses sunspots and interprets them with models to get readings of upcoming weather events, but the majority of the weather sources, including the Bureau of Meteorology, don't use this method. Why is that? Because it does not fit the agenda of man-made global warming. You see, these mainstream media meteorology companies, they're not interested. Again, they have so much money wrapped up in their funding from the government for global warming. They know once this drumbeat gets louder, that money's going to run away. So they're kind of just beating around the bush on these articles. It's almost like we're going to tell on you, but not really, these journalists here. According to the National Weather Service, sunspots are areas where magnetic field, okay, and then it goes into the history about solar activity and 50 and 40,000 year cycles, and he even talks a little bit about ocean stuff too. But I just find it weird that today I happen to stumble across two articles on different parts of the world. Winter after this season should gradually get cooler each year until sunspot activity starts to increase. This guy's smart, this Mr. Taylor here, even though he's an amateur. Very smart guy. I'm glad this editor picked up this story. These people don't realize it, but they're starting to unveil the truth here little by little. There's been so much disclosure this year about grand solar minimum, and now I think we're starting to catch everyone's attention about global cooling. And also, I wanted to make a quick mention, too, before I forget, my local meteorologist here in Buffalo wrote an interesting article about chemtrails and how they're a controversial conspiracy theory. He talks about the basics of ice crystals at certain altitudes, and that's the one question that you have to ask yourself. What's the temperature at 30,000 feet in the air? So whatever vapor comes off of a jet engine is going to turn into ice crystals. And what was interesting is that he went in to talk about how there was some idea of geosolaring, which means seeding the sky with crystals to cool the atmosphere. And he did mention in this article that these ice crystals do reflect sunlight back into space. But he mentions in the article that they didn't want to seed the skies because the amount of cooling that would happen would be too much. And he's right, especially if they were trying to seed the sky now, it would be beyond way too much. So everybody's you're starting to hear the words cooler, reflecting light back into space. This is terms that we weren't hearing 2 years ago or even last year. Hot dispute over money threatens Paris climate deal. Again, another situation where money is involved. Poorer countries fear getting stuck with a pricey tab here in Bonn, Germany. The lack of green is fouling up efforts to hit ambitious targets to reduce pollution. Green, as in money. The traditional fight between rich and poor countries over the best approach to climate change has hit a fresh diplomatic impasse. As the clock ticks down for a key international summit in December. Now, they mentioned this 3 times, key international summit in December. Okay. The key sticking points are who's more responsible for advancing the fight against climate change. Crucially, who picks up the tab? And this is where President Trump felt that this was necessary for us to pull out, because the United States is one of the richer countries in the world, if not the richest country in the world. And at the end, I'm going to fast forward through this. Y'all can read this in the description. But at the end here it says, one long-standing issue causing frustration among developing countries is for rich nations to meet a pledge to provide climate finance worth $100 billion annually by 2020. That's why Trump pulled us out. Because he knew we would be stuck with the bill. And they are wanting this agreement. They want the richer nations to meet a pledge to provide climate finance worth $100 billion a year by 2020. Trump's pulling out of this out of common sense. we're going to look like we're going to have egg on our face if we would have stayed in this by the year 2020, folks. I promise you the global anomaly temperature will be below baseline. I mean, could you imagine the outrage from the public about billions of dollars going out the door yearly to a climate treaty that's based on false science? So Trump is setting up, in my opinion, his administration, our government, is now starting to take a different outline here on what is important. Was this the article that talked about the U.S. government as well? No, that's the next one. Okay. Another good article here. Cheers. Trump Pentagon erases climate change from the report drafted during the Obama administration. Check this out. Not only they took it out of the report, 23 times the word climate change was mentioned, and they took it out. They also, and the EPA also had removed the word from its website and its report. Now they're just saying climate and extreme weather. This is what stuck out the most. This, to me, is huge. If you can't read between the lines on this, guys, this move de-emphasizes the U.S. military's focus on adapting to rising sea levels, which impact military bases around the world and preparations for increasingly hot temperatures as well. So what this says here is that by the United States government removing the words climate change from their reports, basically they're denying man-made global warming, A. And when I see a statement here that says this move de-emphasizes the military's original focus, which was adapting to rising sea levels and world temperatures to get hotter. Well, now they're saying that's not what they're going to worry about. They are shifting away from that. Just 2 years outside of that report being wrote, and this administration is moving away to be ready for events that aren't going to happen in our lifetime anyway, not until the next warming period. So, great articles here on Climate Depot. Both of them have money all over them, but the reason for the first 4 articles, guys, is that not only is it starting to happen on a local event, but now we're starting to see it more in our government day by day. They're making changes to the way we do things here about climate-related topics. They are now erasing the word climate change from that report that got us into that money-grubbing Paris, climate treaty. The EPA that word doesn't even exist on the website anymore. And, when I hear and read the other article where it talks about where NOAA and the ICPP also have curved their temperatures to adjust the CO2 charts because they just can't get it through their heads that CO2 has nothing to do with warmer temperatures. It's a fact. In fact, they pointed out the facts in this other article here that CO2 is proved to be a major greening effect. Right here, number 5, increased CO2 has resulted in beneficial greening of the planet and produced plants requiring less water for photosynthesis. I talked about this the other day too, where not only do we have nitrogen present in our atmosphere because we're cooling, but we also have it in our bedrock. And that's good for plants. And that also gives plants the ability to consume more CO2. So that's why we're not worried about CO2 increase, because there's other elements in our atmosphere that is helping absorbing the CO2. So even if the man-made global warming story wants to try to say that it's too much for us, there's other things that are offsetting the consumption of CO2 by just our plants alone. Kilauea volcano, 18 fissures so far, state of emergency declared. This outbreak is very close to the Puna geothermal venture plant, where plant operators moved 60,000 gallons of highly flammable penetane earlier this week. During a May 9th conference, Hawaii Governor David Ig said the authorities are also concerned about the effects of the lava on the plant's geothermal wells. The new eruptive phase follows a dramatic week in the ongoing very complex Kilauea eruption. On May 9th, the USGS warned of a possible steam-driven eruptions at the Kilauea summit once rapidly falling lava lake up there gets below groundwater. Now, here's a great picture here to show you how this explosive magma explosion is going to happen. We've already seen the lava lake drop all the way down. We're probably right about here right now. Experts are saying that we can expect a major explosion from this volcano within a week. Now, they were stressing it on other weather channels as well that it could blow in a week. But the very beginning of his statement was talking about how it's going to blow. I think they know it's not a matter of if, but when now. No numbers so far. We're staying safe so far. Everybody, for the most part, we're not seeing any injuries or any deaths, but we are continuing to see more fissures. As I said, beginning, we have now 18 confirmed fissures. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mari, but didn't we hear that one of the fissures was spewing out lava 100 feet in the air? Fissures? What did I say? Fissures? It could be a fissure. You never know.
What did you ask me? I'm sorry.
Never mind. You get a D for not paying attention. Just kidding. Links in the description. We will be up to date as soon as this thing does explode, which I think it's safe to say we know it is going to explode. It's just a matter of when now. Also, I wanted to mention that, rocks and craters as big as refrigerators could be hurled hundreds or miles up into the air. So this could be very dangerous if you're in that area. But it says this ashfall would not be life-threatening, but it can be irritating and dangerous to health and property. So obviously we don't want anybody breathing that in. But again, believe it or not, guys, this is not a Tambora type of volcano. This has happened before. It's one of the most active volcanoes that we have right now, especially right now. But we showed pictures from 69 to 74, and I think we saw more lava flow from the ground in those pictures than we have so far in these just fissures. Link will be in the description. Take a look here. We have at least 14 killed after heavy rain, strong winds, dust storms hit in Pakistan. This was as of May 14th. 14 people were killed, 22 people were injured. 9 people were killed and 13 others suffered injuries on incidences of a wall and roof collapse after a windstorm in the area. See if we can take a look at this real quick without getting in trouble.
20 seconds.
15 seconds, I'll count. Just looks like a normal severe thunderstorm here in the U.S., but for them, that's all I'm going to show there. At least 5 students have been killed and several others are missing after a bridge collapsed at a tourist site in Pakistan. Over the next 24 hours, heavy rain with gusty winds, dust storms are expected over several places in Upper Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, I think. Link will be in the description for the rest of this footage here on that YouTube video. Mention this because, once again, India, my gosh, at least 61 killed as fierce dust storms strike India again. The death toll is over 200 people. And they're talking, that's how many people have died this month alone. In the month of May in 2018, we've lost 202 lives in India due to dust storms and bad weather. Wind speeds of 68 miles per hour and lightning devastated numerous villages, uprooting trees, bringing down homes, and leaving at least 61 people dead and dozens injured since Sunday, May 13th. The highest death toll reported was in Uttar Pradesh, where more than 30 were injured and 39 were killed on a Sunday. Now, let's put this into perspective. One of the biggest tornadoes in the history of the United States in 1974, Xenia, Ohio, killed 33 people. And that's considered one of the most deadliest tornadoes that we've ever had. These folks here just lost 39 people just like that. 30 people were injured. This is bringing the dust storm death toll to 109 now for the month. So the other 100 deaths that we've had are probably due from flash flooding and other things dealing with floods. And remarkable pictures here on the watchers, thanks to Twitter as well. Let's take a little bit of a look. These dust storms, I lived in Kansas, and you'd have some minor stuff compared to what we're looking at here. These are like wall clouds. Okay, that's gonna have to do it right there. Sorry, folks. you want to check out the rest of that video, make sure you check it out in the description. Show a little bit of this, just more wind. Nothing major. Major for them, not for us. So ominous skies as well. Again, we'll have the link in the description as it kind of just gives off the stats that we've already read. Finally, historic flooding hits the British Columbia after record snowpack starts melting Canada. We're having this problem in Missoula County, Montana as well, and the rivers are raging. Major flooding hit British Columbia on May 10th, 2018, forcing about 4,000 people to evacuate their homes. In quotes, the spring food season is upon us, BC Premier John Horgan said. Heavy rainfall, warm weather, and rapid snowmelt have triggered flood warnings and evacuations in the interior. More than 4,000 British Columbians have been forced from their homes, while thousands more anxiously await to see what rising floodwaters will mean for their homes and livelihoods. Evacuation orders affecting over 2,700 people were issued in parts of Kootenay boundary and from the Christina Lake through the west boundary, including areas of Grand Forks, where the worst flooding since 1948. That broke level waters. 3 regions of the river, Granby, Kettle, and West Kettle, all broke 1948 water levels by amounts of 23.6 inches. About 3,000 residents remain under evacuation order due to an ongoing threat of a second flood. With high forecasted temperatures expected to melt snow at higher elevations, rivers are expected to rise by midweek, reaching levels close to those experienced Thursday, the district said, adding that the snowpack levels were more than double than average this season. It's been that way everywhere. And this was, we were talking about a few days ago where Norway is expecting the worst floods they've seen in some time. And here we are, BC. You're looking at areas here where Norway was expecting the levels as well. And not only are we flooding in Norway and in BC and in Montana and also northern Italy, Greece, Pakistan. I mean, the list goes on. Kenya, Somalia, Rwanda. I don't have enough time to list off everywhere that we're... And, in here we're going to start talking about Florida here soon. And I'll get to that as well in a minute. Just a beautiful day, but unfortunately, the roads have turned into rivers. Link will be in the description if you want to check out any of the video footage here. Briefly, I want to go over this real quick. Subtropical or tropical development is possible in the Gulf of Mexico, but a heavy rain threat to Florida and the southeast regardless. Absolutely. The link will be in the description. I'll let you guys read this here. They're giving it a medium chance over the next 5 days, and this is the area they're talking about. And I know you don't see it right now, but they're thinking somewhere in here there is a little bit of a low-pressure system that is developing as we speak, and I think maybe Tropical Tidbits will show that as well. But this particular storm actually is going to move up the west coast of Florida into Alabama, panhandle of Florida, maybe some parts of Georgia, and the worst case scenario would be in the far east part of Mississippi. So we'll keep our eyes on that, but Weather Channel is giving its guesses here. It's going to be the first of 4 of the past 6 years we featured a storm named before June 1st, which is the official kickoff to hurricane season. So they're thinking this will be a named storm, and I'll show you why, because this storm does kind of set up shop well before the 1st of June. But much of the state can expect 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. We're talking about Florida now. Locally higher expected through heavy thunderstorms, and totals of 3 to 7 inches are likely to fall in southeastern and eastern Florida. Now that's just through the remainder of the week. What they're not talking about what possibly we could be looking at for the weekend as well. So there is a reason why, this drought monitor right here, I promise you by next week that will not be here. This will not exist. None of this, especially down here. That drought monitor should go away altogether. The amount of rain that they've received today alone. They've only, it says here Miami's only measured about 0.37 inches of rainfall since in February. So they're about 1.8 inches below average for this month as well. We'll keep our eye on this. They do expect it to intensify. So we'll see what happens. And since we're talking about hurricanes, I wanted to go ahead and point out one of my personal favorite pages to visit during this time of year. And I know Mari and I spent a lot of time with this when we had Harvey and Irma and Maria and Jose. But this is Mike's weather page, spaghettimodels.com. And right now they do an excellent job of keeping track. He's based out of Florida, so if a lot of his stuff seems to be Florida favoritism, just like us up here in Buffalo, we're going to cover Buffalo weather first before anything else because we're living in it, we're experiencing it. But anyway, this page has got tons of great information, tons of maps, satellite radars, predictions. I highly recommend you guys bookmark this section. Most of you that are watching already, you probably already have this in your bookmarks, but I wanted to show this too, guys. This ain't no joke. Take a look at our 5-day forecast here, rainfall in Florida. That extreme pink right here on the very eastern side of Florida is somewhere right around the 3 to 5 inch range. Now the lighter red is closer to 6 inches, 5 to 6 inches of rain. But this is just a 5-day from today until Friday. They're not counting what's happening after this weekend too as well. And let's get right to it. And before actually we do that, I noticed something today. Here is our radar current right now. I want to direct your guys' attention to right back in here. Now you see this band of moisture, how it goes all the way back here into Central California. But look at this, the motion. Okay, you guys following this? It's a very tight little turn here. You got north to south action, and then you curve it around and go south to north. And I find it, kind of unique that we're seeing these jet stream patterns in the rain bands. I don't remember seeing them so prominent and showing up as well as they do, but let's take a look at Earth Null. And right here is the area that I'm showing you where on the radar it's going north to south and then curves around south to north. Now this right here, this section right here, this is 2 jet streams now. This is a upper, and this is the one that's come off of this one that's spinning off of this high pressure here in the northwest. So this is a combined of 2 jet streams right here. But I just found it very interesting that we're starting to see where these rain bands are showing up, and you can pretty much see the jet stream in the radar. Now this one right now, some of the rain has dissipated over the hours. Earlier today it was very well developed, especially in this particular region right here. You could really see where the jet stream was right in here. But this is where the upper edge is to that bigger part of the jet stream. As we go back, look where my circle is, right there on the upper part. So it's matching up. Just thought that was kind of neat that we could actually see the moisture and the jet stream on the actual moisture radar. Since we're looking at radars, let's go ahead and take a look at our regional action first. Let's go to the continental U.S., get him out of the way so everybody in Texas can see. So we're starting off right now. Actually, this is from the weekend. Let me go ahead and refresh this. Still starts me back from Saturday, so let me get us current here. Let's take a look at where we are right now. This is Monday. This is correct so far. If you look at this motion, we have the severe threat exactly in like almost a rainbow type fashion. This is where our severe threat has been for today. And then, of course, we have this right down here in Florida. Now, this is Monday. And as I click out several days, still Monday, there's that low pressure system right here that has about a 40% chance to do something. And I'll keep my circle right here because this is where they think that this storm is actually, if it is a storm, it's going to make landfall. And look at it. It's very weak, very disorganized. If anything, we're just going to see raindrops or rainfall out of this. Nothing too terrible. But if you're paying attention to the region, guys, this is now Friday. This entire area just continues to get shower activity after shower activity. And let's keep going further into the weekend. And it starts to get a little bit weaker by Friday, but then it picks right back up mid-Friday into early Saturday, and now look at us. We've got rain, and I bet you if I go to Earth Null, this little section right here is part of a jet stream. I'm almost positive. But it's just strange how we're seeing all of these rain bands follow along in the same shape and form as these jet stream patterns. As we continue out, looking at Saturday of next week, very wet, even wetter, almost 30% in the entire East Coast and Southeast. Your rain Saturday, guarantee it. Sunday, same thing, with another low pressure system coming in from the northwest, feeding more moisture into this area on Monday. So at least 7 days of moisture out here in the south and the east. And I'm on Tuesday of next week. Still more moisture pumped in from the northwest. It's like it doesn't stop. We're on Thursday. There's parts of the United States that aren't going to see a sunshine day until a week and a half. And the reason why I bring this up, and here at the end we see our little storm show up. So this takes us all the way to Sunday the 27th, which I know is 13 days away, too far out to tell. But it's just interesting that our GFS models have held up for the last week when it comes to the amount of moisture that we were going to see come in. I wanted to show you guys that little tropical storm that we've been keeping our eye on. Now, as you see, it is still stationary right down here. I'll get my mouse out. As you can see, right in this area, it's still stationary. And then after the 25th, which is how far we were actually getting to see it, you see that low is just still kind of hanging out. And it's starting to get a little bit more intense as it gets closer to the 26th and the 27th. And by the 27th, this model has this storm intensifying. And once again, for the most part, it's still just kind of hanging out in Guatemala and Belize. And it's starting to move its way into the Gulf on the 27th. But each time we do a run on this, we notice this system gets a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. And for those who are worried about what the temperatures are going to be like for that time of the year, let's go ahead and take a look. They're not going to show me that one. We'll go back to the continental U.S. We can get a good enough idea what the temperature run is from here. I'll just go ahead and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but here's how warm we're going to be. The waters look like we're going to be somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s. So certainly warm enough for activity to get going on the 27th. As for the rest of the United States, spring, hopefully summer is starting to kick in some spots. But believe it or not, there's still parts of the United States, like the Dakotas, for instance, in South Dakota, you're still getting highs in 58, 57 degrees. So we're still struggling to see spring-like temperatures in parts of the U.S. And a lot of that, too, that particular area that we're looking at that's got the green shade, that's where a lot of these storms are coming in, too, and crossing over. So a lot of this has to do with cloud coverage, the amount of moisture, and then, of course, you're looking down the Gulf, and they're in the 80s and 90s. Well, they're getting that different kind of moisture. It's very humid from the Gulf. I mean, this is going to be a mess. It's going to be hot and sticky. But look at how the temperature is kind of just here. I'm backing up to where we start off from this heavier rain. And it seems like the heavier the rain on some of these days, you notice the temperatures don't make it much out of the 60s and 70s. And then other days where it's less rain, you'll see higher temperatures. These daytime temps in the south look to be all in the 80s during this time of increased moisture that we're going to see. So we're going to be really busy here at the Grand Solar Minimum channel, no doubt. And it brings me to show you this real quick. Those of you who see sevens in your states of suitable days of working in the fields, you better get out there and take advantage because these numbers are about to go drastically down. Hopefully all the planning is done by this point because the rains are going to come midweek somewhere in the southeast around midweek and continue all the way until next week during the middle of the week. And as far as the GFS can see, we're looking at even more rain past the next 10 days. So it's going to be interesting to see how the south holds up here over the next several days. And if there's any flooding or anything like that that could come of this, we certainly hope not, but it is possible. Mari, how is our chat doing today?
People are going to yell at me if I don't have a mic, Jake.
Oh.
See, I need a mic, Jake. The people in the chat are wonderful, and I have a feeling that they're really hungry because they cannot stop talking about food. It's unreal.
Well.
And now the dog's mad. Do you hear that?
Yep. The dog's mad and people are hungry. It's almost dinner time, so that makes sense. Guys, I really appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out our update for today. We will be back tomorrow at normal time. Once in a while throughout the week, we'll try to different times, 4 o'clock here, maybe noon on certain other days. But tomorrow we should be back at our normal time slot at 7:30 p.m. unless otherwise announced. But thank you for tuning in to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. We will talk soon.